Welcome, one and all, and welcome to this round one exhibition match between Byronthewellwell and Garay Oak for the ORAS Ubers Invitational. This seems like the highlight match for this round between two pretty accomplished Ubers players, with Gary having a pretty successful season so far in Ubers, making the grand finals of the BKC Invitational, and Byron doing quite well in ORAS in most of the games he's played, managing an Ubers Premier League franchise and also doing pretty well in the Ubers World Cup. And the team choices here are pretty interesting. Gary going with a Tentacruel lead offense. It's going to be Sash right here. We're expecting it to get up some T-spikes. It's going to help Hex Gengar probably in the back. Versus Byron's Gladius balance. Pretty well versed with this team myself. This is going to be a default Gladios with some sort of probably a toxic Ho-Oh. And we're expecting a bulky Salamence there as well with a Arceus Rock combination probably. It looks like Gary's gotten the T-spikes up, and here comes a Lottie. Oh, that's a big miss for Byron there. Really useful. He's able to get the defog up with pretty much no issues there. But Gary is going to be able to trade up his own rocks in this process. But it looks like Byron doesn't go for the defog. Pretty surprising choice there, as he's going to let most of his team take poison now, especially the two main being Arceus Rock and Pedon. But it's going to be a little difficult now for Byron with the two grounded Pokemon being poisoned and the rest of his team also taking hazard damage from rocks. Whereas it's a pretty good opportunity for Gary's Arceus in the background to do a lot of damage. But we're going to see another miss coming in from Gary, which is not doing him any good here, especially because it could have gotten a nice bit of chip on Salamence, which would have also been difficult to recover from after taking hazard damage. But we are seeing the Xerneas come in now, which is expected after the Salamence takes pretty much no damage, and it's the only thing that can get the Salamence out of this matchup, which should be a Geomancy from Garay, which is going to possibly take down at least two members of Byron's team, depending on the set. Especially if it's Rest Talk, then it could be a huge problem for Byron, with him not really having any reliable way to beat it, especially since Ho-Oh is going to take hazard damage as it comes in. So it's going to be interesting to see what the series of plays here. The fact that frustration only did 46 goes to show that that is a bulky Salamence from Byron, probably max, just max HP, max no attack. But we do see the Klefki go down, which means that expecting probably the Pedon to come in here and revenge. But if it is rest, then there's a good chance that the Xerneas can actually rest up on the Pedon and try to spin the lottery a little bit. But you could even see Byron going to Ho-Oh here, depending on the set. If it is the original set, which is a bulky Sacred Fire, Brave Bird, Toxic Roost, then you could see it come in here and get the revenge kill. Especially since Ho-Oh doesn't have much utility in this matchup anymore. We expecting the Arceus Rock to be super useful towards the end game, but it honestly does come down to the Arceus here. But it looks like Byron is just going to go for the defog. So it comes down to whether it's rest or not. It looks like it's aromatherapy, which means that this could be trouble for Byron if the Xerneas is able to live Precipice Blades from Groudon, which I don't think it should. At this level, I think if it's a roll, it should be in Byron's favor. But we should see the Xerneas go down here, unless Gary switches to Rayquaza to have an extra sack, which could be a really good play in the situation, and something that Byron might find a little bit difficult to come back from, even though he has Ho-Oh at full, which has taken no damage. I'm expecting that Ho-Oh to be super useful versus the E-Killer in the back. Byron's going to think about this turn here. Expecting Byron to definitely click Precipice Blaze. There's not really much of an option for him here. But Gary is the one who can choose to either get the chip off on Pedon, which definitely is useful, but it will take him down a Pokemon, and he could also get a free Mega Evolution with Gengar by doing that. I also think it's really interesting to see what the Gengar is going to be. Because if it's a Destiny Bond Gengar, then it's a huge problem for Byron, because it will probably take down one Pokemon for sure. There's not much he can do to avoid that. But Gary does go for the damage here. And Byron clicks Roar. I'm not really sure about that. just because the Precipice Blades would have ensured, unless it was a roll, it would have ensured that it was at least a 4-3 situation for Byron. But now, the Zernia still being in the game, it looks like Byron might have negative tempo, which is going to affect his ability to actually close this game. But he does switch out to the Ho-Oh, which is a sensible move here. We're going to see pretty much this bounce off, and it's a leftovers as expected. So it's going to be a bulky Brave Bird, Sacred Fire, Toxic Roost set. And in this current matchup, it does look pretty threatening, but depending on what Byron's last two sets are, what Garay's last two sets are, it's going to be an interesting finish. We see Garay just drop the Xerneas here, not risking taking burn on the Rayquaza or the Arceus Extreme Killer, which is a definitely a good play on his end. He goes for the Geomancy, which pretty funny if Byron misses again, but I think he's going to go for the Brave Bird to be safe, as expected. So we should be seeing the Rayquaza coming in here. I think it's a good time for it to come in. Yep, because he wants to get a chip off on the Arceus Rock to be able to sweep with the extra the E-Killer in the back. And depending on the E-Killer set is, I think Garay is just hoping to have enough chip to be able to take down Mence and Arceus Rock both. Especially since if Garay has been calcing, he'll know that the Mence is bulky and less in attack nature. And especially after Mega Evolving, there's the lack of threat from Intimidate. So this would be a pretty good position, one would think, for an Arceus Extreme Clear sweep. If Garay is able to play his cards right and figure out the sets what Byron is running. It's also going to be interesting to see from Byron's perspective if he's going to go directly into Arceus Rock, risk catching an Earthquake, or just stay in here with Ho-Oh and get some more chip damage. I think he's going to go to the Arceus Rock, just because if Rayquaza or Dragon Dances, then it's an issue for Byron, but it looks like he's going to stay in and go for Brave Bird, which could be tricky for Byron. I think there's a chance that the Ho-Oh could live from here, which if it does, I don't know the role, but if it does, then it's going to be a really close finish, as we're expecting. So max HP Ho-Oh is super underrated Pokemon, taking down Rayquaza 1v1 in a probably a disadvantage 1v1 matchup. But here we're going to see Arceus versus Mence finally occur. I do think that if it's not Life Orb, then Mence doesn't get 2-hit KO'd. But if it's Life Orb, we are going to see it get 2-hit KO'd, which would mean it would come down to Gengar versus Arceus Rock and Primal Groudon matchup, which Gengar would win because it's at full health and it takes one Judgment for sure. So Byron is going to be looking to sweep with Salamence here or possibly lose the game. I'm not totally sure if Arceus Rock would have been an option in this situation for Byron, simply because as far as I remember, this is a facade Mence, meaning that if Gengar runs Hex Wisp, then it actually gives Byron a pretty good chance at the very end to be able to get a Dragon Dance sweep. But it's hard to say. I think I might be over-calculating here. Either way, Byron in this position should be thinking of a way to win with Salamence so that the Gengar doesn't have an opportunity versus just Arceus Rock and Primal Groudon. So we're going to be expecting Byron to go for the win here. Now, unless Byron doesn't have Will-O-Wisp on Arceus Rock, you are going to see Mence stay in here. But if he does have Will-O-Wisp, which clearly he doesn't, he just stays in. We're going to see 48%. Now, that's a really critical roll. So Byron will end up losing this game if that's Life Orb, because even if you roost up the damage, it would be quite tricky for him to be able to secure the win in this position. And the only way he can outspeed the Gengar is through a Dragon Dance, but we see him switch out and thus lose the game in the process, as Garay is going to clean up with the Arceus at full health. It is Life Orb though, so Arceus Rock, if it's Will-O-Wisp, can get up the Wisp here, and Garay must be thinking about that in the back of his mind, even if it is EQ, because if he goes to Gengar, that's very smart by Garay right there, ensuring that he doesn't have to risk the Arceus getting burned or predicting whether it's Will-O-Wisp or not. Now Garay can just click Wisp, Hex I should say, and the Hex plus toxic damage should be enough to take down Arceus Rock. The only thing Garay might be slightly concerned about is the Mence doing a counter sweep, but seeing that it's That's actually still something that could occur, but I think it's quite unlikely, especially now that Gengar has taken enough damage. I don't know if Byron could have maybe gone for a position where Gengar versus Salamence, but clearly it doesn't matter because it was taunt, so Gary would have secured the win no matter what. But this was really well played by Gary at the end, making sure that he uses his E-Killer to his advantage and takes Byron down with him. I meant to say Gengar takes down Roxas with it, but that didn't happen either. So we are going to see Gary win this game. It's going to be closer than I expected, actually. For some reason in my head, I had the men's at 52%. But we are going to see Gary take the win. Yeah, I knew the E-Killer +4 roll, but for some reason I was second guessing whether or not Mens was going to be able to tank that, and if Byron had changed any of the defense EVs. But that was a really good first game, pretty close. They both ended up losing 6 Pokemon each. Way closer than I was initially expecting it to go, but fantastic game one, as expected from these two titans of the game. And we're going to be back very shortly with game two. Alright, we're just in time for game two. Looks like Byron goes for the comfortable choice in Latias, Gengar, Yveltal, and Gary's going to go for Cloyster, Mewtwo, Y. I'm expecting Arceus Ghost offense. Not sure if he's changed the teams or sets, but Gary's team could also run Arceus E-Killer. Usually it's Arceus Ghost though, but this matchup looks pretty interesting. Not sure what type of sets Byron has been running. If in my game I also ran this team, which Byron is using, and I was running Icy Wind Gengar, which has a fantastic lead matchup versus Cloyster, because you can Icy Wind turn 1, outspeed by 1 point, and kill the Cloyster, and just allowing the Cloyster to get T-Spikes up, let alone the opportunity cost of it not clicking T-Spikes and maybe clicking something else. But if they counter lead, it's a problem. But for Byron, luckily, it looks like Gary did not watch the earlier replay, and we're going to see Byron click Icy Wind here, ensuring that the only thing Gary is able to do is get, at best, Toxic Spikes. But if Gary clicks Self Mass by mistake or just attacks, then he's going to go down here just getting either chip or no damage on the Gengar. You could also see Gary maybe switch out here to Yveltal just to threaten Byron's Gengar a little bit. But I don't think it's the best option, and we do see Gary just stay in here. And he makes a rookie mistake, not something you'd expect from Gary, especially after this had already been revealed in the previous game from a team that's very well known. But either way, Byron makes the careful move here. It feels kind of funny knowing every play Byron's going to make because he's using the teams that we're also, or I should say I'm so comfortable and know so well. But Pidon comes in, and we're expecting Stealth Rocks from Gary's side. Byron should be able to switch here, but he stays in. Not sure about that because I feel like Gengar would be really important versus the E-Killer matchup, since Byron's team doesn't really have a great E-Killer chip except taking it down with Destiny Bond. Either way, definitely going to see a switch from Byron here. I'm not able to tell for sure what Gary's Gengar is. I keep speaking. I mean to say Groudon. I feel that damage indicates that it's closer to a special defensive set. So you could see some sort of Lava Plume, Roar, Rocks, which is definitely an issue if he brings in Yveltal, but he ends up staying in. Byron ends up staying in, and Gengar goes down, which definitely will have challenges later on for Byron. Unless it's Arceus Ghost, because then Yveltal can take it pretty comfortably. But Byron looks like he's willing to take his chances, and especially considering that Xerneas now has a really good matchup versus the rest of Gary's team. It will be Geomancy on this team, but not sure if Byron will be able to get a Geomancy up in the situation, especially considering that Gary can go to his Taunt Mewtwo, which is what I'm expecting it to be. We should see soon enough what Gary's countermeasure is to Xerneas. I would be very surprised if Gary didn't have an appropriate response, considering that he let Pidon die so early in the game. Byron, on the other hand, will want to get as much damage off as he can with Xerneas, as there are no Fairy Resists on Gary's team, and any Moonblast will get at least 50% off on every single Pokemon on Gary's side. So it's going to be very tricky for Gary to navigate this position. For Byron, his win condition is definitely going to be the Ilveltal or even the E-Killer. But for Gary, it's going to have to be his Arceus that does the sweeping because it's the only thing that can actually kill everything on Byron's side, especially Byron's own Arceus and Primal Groudon. We do see Mewtwo come in. Now, I have a feeling that because Gary took so long to think about this, he might be bluffing a taunt, and he might expect Byron to fall for it, which is why I'm expecting Byron to Moonblast here. But Gary doesn't actually bluff, and he does have the taunt on him, which great job from Byron clicking Moonblast anyway, because that was the best bet. It covers both taking damage from Side Strike or predicting the taunt. And Byron, I think most importantly, just wants to get off chip over here for later in the game when any of his remaining Pokemon can take down Mewtwo, especially Latios that can just click a Side Shock and kill Mewtwo from here. But we are going to see Mewtwo go down, and Byron click Moonblast here is going to have switch tempo because Gary is going to bring in a new Pokemon here in a 5v3 situation. But Gary goes to a Veltal, which I'm expecting him. I'm expecting to be his trump card right now. It's Life Orb, so that's going to be a tricky endgame for Byron here, which is especially considering the fact that he could have saved his Xerneas for this position exactly and ensured he got a Geomancy up versus the Veltal, possibly even winning by doing so. But now it looks like Byron's going to have to maybe engage in some 1v1 with his own Life Orb Veltal, or take the chance of going to Latios, dropping a Draco, and hoping that he doesn't have any Sucker Punch or switching to Xerneas. But either way, Byron has Gary's Xerneas covered pretty well with Lava Plume, Roar, Stealth Rock, Dawn in the background. So nothing to worry about there, but Byron will have to worry now about an Veltal that's going to be an issue, and most importantly, Gary's Arceus, which Byron doesn't have any real answer to except his own Arceus. So what I'm expecting is for Byron to try to win with a Sword Stance. He definitely isn't going to go to it right now because it's too risky going into an Ilveltal without knowing whether it runs Foul Play or not. So you should expect to see Byron just go to his own Veltal, maybe click a knockoff just to figure out what the set is, click some Oblivion Wings, and just do some recovery and passive damage, because Gary doesn't really have any countermeasures himself since Gary is the one who's down a Pokemon. So we are expecting Byron to have the upper hand here, but Gary can come back and pull something out the bag here with some favorable RNG if that does occur. So Byron does go to his Veltal, clicks Oblivion Wing, but this is a naive nature of Veltal, so it's going to take a lot of damage from this Oblivion Wing. There you go, 55%. They both take the same, and if they're both running the same set with Timid, then if Gary wins the speed tie here, Byron does go down, but he clicks the knockoff, which was a really good countermeasure to even lose, not really losing the speed tie, but going down here, ensuring that he can now go to his Arceus and click a Sword Stance, because Veltal's damage is just not going to be good enough. But we see here that it's not running Foul Play, but it gets a really fortunate crit with Dark Pulse that might cost Byron the game because he's running no. Oh wow, that's lethal from Gary. 2 crits in a row. We do see Gary switch out and go to his Arceus Ghost, and Byron's going to click Shadow Claw here, which means because of those less fortunate crits, he's going to maybe lose if the Brick Break kills. I think Byron's running about 295 special EVs, but he does end up dying, which means he's going to lose this series. Really unfortunate endgame for Byron there, who would have definitely secured this win if it weren't for those pesky crits. The Arceus was in a position to secure the win from there. Would have clicked Shadow Claw versus Arceus Ghost. Would have clicked Extreme Speed versus Veltal, taking it down. And would have definitely won the game from that situation. But now we're going to see Byron lose here. He should click Stealth Rock because Gary is 100% going to click Shadow Force. So if he wants to have any hope of maybe pulling something out of the bag, this is it. But Gary is going to probably have Geomancy Xerneas that's going to take down the Latios for sure. But really unfortunate endgame here for Byron, who would have ended up winning. It could be said that Gary would have also had a pretty 50-50 chance of winning if he won the speed tie versus Veltal, because Byron had no way of coming back. But it can be said that it was in Byron's favor to win, especially after he had knocked off the hit of Gary's Veltal's Life Orb. And the 2 crits definitely costed him the game, where he could have been in a pretty commanding position. But great series regardless. I think it was a fantastic show from both players. Garay playing really well in the first game to secure the win, and overall pretty close and great series from both players. Good games, and see you guys in the next.